Hello, everyone. My name is Maggie Gorman, and I'm a senior here at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. And today I'm going to be talking to you about the importance of feedback and praise in the K through 12 classroom. So first, I'm going to start off with a little bit of a story. So first, I'm going to name this man here Bob. And when we go to nursing homes or when we see an older person, we always try to be a little bit nicer, right? And personally, I have had an interaction where I was helping an older person putting things away, and I just automatically started talking a little bit louder to them and talked a little bit slower to them without ever them telling me that I needed to talk slower or I needed to talk louder to them or anything like that, and that I was being just a little bit extra helpful more than I would for, say, someone else my age. Things that they can do that I would assume that someone else my age can do themselves. I was doing a little bit extra to help this older person. And I noticed that they were older because they appeared older in how they looked, in how they walked, in the clothing that they wore. Those are the cues that I saw as them being older. And I wanted to make sure that I was being helpful and that they were understanding me, but really I was just making sure that I was letting them know that, I see them and I want to be helpful, but maybe I wasn't being helpful in the best way possible. However, I did this because I wanted to help them, right? And this is an experience that maybe is not individual to just myself. I think that most of us here would be able to say that we have done these types of experiences because we want to be helpful and we want to make sure that we're looking after people that, are around us in our society, maybe people we don't necessarily know, but just people that are around us because we want to be helpful and thoughtful and caring about other people. However, as much as we want to be positive and helpful, this isn't necessarily the easiest way to do it, and it's not necessarily the best way to help an older person or someone who exhibits older age cues, right? We don't actually know that Bob needed any help. I didn't actually know that I needed to talk slower or talk louder or that he had any type of hearing difficulties at all, right? I was just assuming that because of the way he looked, and everyone has done this at one point or another. I'm not here to say, unbelievable to assume that this older person needed some extra help. I'm not here to say that. What I am here to say is that this is completely normal and that we are trying to be helpful and that it's okay. Our intentions are really good and they're positive because we want to help that person. We are acting on these actions are based on assumptions because instead of finding out what accommodations they may need, if at any point we're just assuming that, hey, we're going to help them out, we're not going to have to ask what they need, we're just going to help them on making sure that they don't need anything else. We're just going to put it all out there. And this maybe is not the only experience with it. Maybe we've had a couple of different experiences, something along those lines. But you may be wondering, how does me talking about an experience with an older person that I've had, that me accommodating to them and talking, almost talking down to them, talking louder to them, using slower word choices, things like that, how is that helpful and how is that even relevant to anything in the K through 12 classroom, right? The goal is to support everybody that we're around. We want to be helpful and positive, and you may be thinking, why does it matter, right? We talk about this interaction with older people because we're able to connect it to interactions in our classroom. The goal is to support students in our classroom in the well-being and achievement of that student's success. And when students are in the classroom, we want to make sure that we're caring about them, that we're helping them, that we show them that we really care about who they are and that they matter to us. We try to make sure that they are being well looked after and that we're paying attention to them, we're attentive to them and their needs and everything like that. Because otherwise, teachers wouldn't just be in this profession if they didn't love it and they didn't want to help the students, they didn't want to help them be better and grow. Because obviously there are many other things that teachers could be doing that maybe paid a little bit more, right? And so we're looking at it from the sense that we want to be helpful, but how can we be the most helpful? Teachers are already trying to develop and promote students that can achieve in the classroom and beyond. We understand that, and teachers are already doing a lot. However, there can always be more to improve on. Teachers and students alike are always growing and learning, and that's what makes classrooms so interesting because teachers are learning from students are learning from teachers, students are learning from each other, teachers are learning from other teachers. There's just a lot of learning that goes around, and it's always helpful to put in some new information, new material to make sure that everybody has the best possible chance to learn as much and to know as much information as possible to be the best and most helpful. And so, as we look forward, you may be thinking, how can I help? How can I be better? How can I, maybe not have this kind of interaction with an older person? And how can I translate that into success in my classroom, right? Because we want these students to be helped and to be nurtured and to be assisted as much as possible. And so today I'm going to tell you about the communication predicament of aging model. And communication researchers have brought this model forward because they have seen many times when people are interacting with an older person, there are things that happen in a cyclical nature that then people think that they're being helpful and they think that they're being positive and with a positive intent going towards this older person, but it actually does not help the older person. In fact, it harms the older person. And so starting off at the top of the model, starting off with encountering the older person. This may be an interaction that we have or that we're just noticing them. And that's when we start to move to the next stage where we're recognizing their old age cues. This could be wrinkles. This could be a walking helper like a cane or a walker or something along those lines. It could be the way that they're dressing, the way that their hair looks, things of those nature. That's how we would identify someone as older in our society. And so that's what we start with. And once we have identified that they are an older person, then we automatically put in stereotyped expectations into our brain. We start to look at them and think, okay, so they are an older person. This is how I'm expecting them to behave. So this is how I'm going to interact with them because of those expectations and stereotypes that I've decided upon. And I'm going to help them. I'm going to be positive. I want to make sure that they, are being helped and that they don't need anything else. And so that then leads to a modified speech behavior. And that means that we are changing how we're communicating with them. We're changing how we start our interactions with them. And this would be when we are changing how we are having that conversation. We talk slower, we talk louder, we use different words maybe. We may be going over to them to be more hands-on with them, to show them certain things depending upon the situation at hand. But these are how we would start to change how we interact with them. And then the older person takes in this communication that's been given to them and these interactions that they've been given, and they're seeing that they're being stereotyped by their age, by their appearance, and that then lessens how we're able to communicate with each other. That older person and that younger person interaction is then constrained because their interaction is surrounded by assumptions and stereotypes, which aren't necessarily true. And most of the time, stereotypes are not true. And so we have to be very careful and cautious of that. And so when that older person starts to understand that people are assuming that about them, they start to feel a loss of self-esteem and that they are going to have less social interactions because they don't want to be stereotyped as much. And so when they start to have less social interactions, they start to believe that they're older and that they are acting older, that they may actually need those assistance and accommodations that people were automatically giving to them because of the stereotypes associated with it. With that change in social interaction, it lessens their self-esteem because they don't feel like how they used to feel. They don't feel like themselves. They feel like they can't just be themselves and automatically be how they are. And so this creates a change in how they interact and how they go about their next interactions. And then it creates a negative cycle, which then works through all the way. And this theory is important because it can be applied to interactions with your students in the classroom. And you may be thinking, how is this even possible? This is talking about old people. My interactions are with students in the K through 12 classroom. I don't think this even applies because this is talking about a younger person interaction with an older person interaction. However, I'm going to show you. I have created a modified cycle here to show how it can be effective and important in the classroom. So first, we are going to start off with the interactions you have with your students in the classroom. This can start off with them walking into the classroom, then them saying hello. It can be interactions of them walking around the classroom. It can be their interactions that you are having with the student one-on-one, maybe in a group, those kind of interactions. Think of those in your head. Next, we're going to look at the recognition of students' behaviors and achievement ability. And so this is where we're going to start to notice, what teachers are seeing in their students just off the bat, how they're interpreting what their students are capable of, what their students are not capable of, and what stereotypes and expectations are placing on them just from a few interactions and just from the assumptions that teachers are making around that student. Once those assumptions have been made, stereotype expectations are put into place. And these stereotypes then alter the praise and feedback that teachers are going to provide to their students. Teachers are always going to be looking for the best in their students. However, teachers are humans. You are all humans here. You've all made mistakes. You will continue to make mistakes going forward in your life. And that is just part of being humans. But we can look at those mistakes and move forward from them. And with this model here, Teachers are altering their feedback and praise to their students based on those assumptions and stereotypes that they have. If they are assuming that a student maybe needs them to talk slower, they're going to talk slower to that student. If they're going to assume that that student is maybe not as engaged as other students, they're going to change how they're interacting with that student compared to other students in ways that maybe is not helpful, and then leads to constrained opportunities for communication between the teacher and that student. The teacher thinks that they're being helpful and doing what they think is best for that student, but the student is saying, I've never shown my teacher that this is what I need. They're saying things to me that I don't even agree with. I don't understand it. I don't appreciate that. And then there's conflict in that relationship that makes it harder for those teachers and students to get along and feel cared for and want to succeed in that classroom. Moving from that, when the student feels that constraint for communication, the teacher is going to find it harder to communicate, but the student's also going to find it harder to be in that classroom and be in that situation. They're going to have a lower self-esteem. They're not going to want to put forth as much motivation, put forth so much energy, because they're thinking, well, I can't do it. My teacher thinks I can't do it, so I obviously can't do it. And so then they're going to have a lower orientation to learning or a lower motivation to continue to do better and to learn more, because they're seeing how their teacher treats them and how their teacher doesn't see that they can do more things because of the interactions that they have had. This then leads to students feeling negative about themselves and their abilities in the classroom and school as a whole, and their perceived ability level is much lower in these cases. And then this just creates a negative cyclical pattern within the classroom. And although you as a teacher may not have had these interactions with your students, students are always going to be bringing in past relationships with teachers that did not see the best in them, did not push them to do more, did not push them to achieve more. And so it can make it more difficult for your good intent, and your positive attempts to come across to that student as that you're being positive and that you're encouraging them. And so really it starts with having to be able to build that relationship with them. And it's also important to acknowledge the inequitable success across students in your classroom. Students bring in different experiences and perspectives, as do you as well. And with these experiences and perspectives, everybody has to navigate those different situations and experiences that everybody brings in order to have a successful positive interaction and experience in the classroom. And so some students are seeing over and over again that they're not being able to achieve these goals that are being put forth for them. And so they're seeing that teachers are not working with them and working for them to help them achieve these goals. And so there are many barriers that could be in the way of their success, and these could be their home situation, what their family is like, how much attention they're receiving at home, what are the communication tactics being used at home. All of that can become a barrier in your classroom for those intents and interactions to get through to that child to be positive and helpful for them. Then you have documented abilities or disabilities, which can be a barrier for students because they may not be able to do what you're asking them to do, and unless you take the time to get to know them, you're not going to be able to know that. Another barrier is that personal ability beliefs, whether in the student or in yourself. Those are going to be barriers that each student and each teacher are going to have to face in order to have a successful interaction and a successful year in that classroom. Another barrier could be the biases that teachers are bringing into the classroom. Every teacher brings in biases, and whether you are aware of them or not, you do contain some biases. You hold biases because of your own experiences and perspectives. This could be biases about what male students are able to do, what female students are able to do, what students that are higher achieving in terms of what their academic work looks like are able to do, and what work that students are able to do if they're not achieving as well as students that are coming from low income families. Those are some biases that can come into the classroom that can inhibit your relationship building and intent from being as positive and interactions being as effective as possible. Another barrier that could possibly be being had is just as simple as the way we are talking, the tone we're expressing, the situation we are having, and the interactions we're having within the students and that relationship as well. And before you start thinking negatively about all the interactions that you've had and questioning yourself, just know and acknowledge that we as humans are linguistic chameleons. We are always changing how we're interacting with people. We're changing what method we're using, what ability we're doing, what interaction we have, regardless of the age of people that we're interacting with. Teachers tend to do it a lot more during their day because they're talking to students, teachers, staff, even parents every day. And so this is going to change how we interact with students and how we accommodate to them. And so moving in to this next communication theory that scholars have put forth is the communication accommodation theory. And this theory is just a nice way of saying that the adjustment of communication is why communication scholars have put this forth, because we adjust our communication. Sometimes we over accommodate to students, sometimes we under accommodate to students, and sometimes we are able to adjust our communication just right for that interaction that makes it most beneficial for both you as the teacher and for the student. You're able to get your point across to the student, and they're able to see that you're accommodating to them and they're accommodating to you, and you're able to have that relationship and communication that's beneficial for both of you in that way. And how we interact with the student, how we interpret the situation, is how we're going to accommodate to that student. So it really comes down to whether we're over accommodating or if we're under accommodating in our classrooms. And teachers are going to adjust their difficulty of communication so that students understand what is being talked about. And the praise and feedback is different for each student because each student has different needs and abilities just inherently. And so one way that people have over accommodated in the classroom is when teachers are bringing up situations where they're providing too much assistance for the student and they're not allowing the student to be able to find that balance of like what they can and cannot do and what their strengths and weaknesses are. And so when teachers are over accommodating to them, they're giving them too much feedback. They're giving them too much positive praise where they're saying, you're doing the best that you are. You're the absolute greatest. You're doing this to the best of your ability, like over exaggerating their ability so that they think that they're at the top of the level when really they may be just here and they're still able to get to that next top level. And so when teachers are over accommodating, they may think that they're being most helpful, but really they're being over accommodative and not letting the student actually see where they are in a realistic sense and allowing the student to understand where they need to grow. If teachers are being under accommodative, it means that teachers are not providing enough praise and feedback for that student. They may think that they're providing just enough for that student, but really that student may be in need of a lot more feedback and positive praise and reinforcement than other students in the classroom because maybe they're really struggling with this topic and they're just looking for that extra push to know that they can do it. They don't think of themselves that highly. And so with that new encouragement, students can feel that way. But unless teachers are accommodating to the right level, it's hard to know that, and you can be under accommodating really easily. And this is something that teachers do all of the time, and this is very normal, and interactions are going to happen this way. And the intent of the interaction is almost always positive, and teachers are always going to want to accommodate to their students to help them be the best that they can be, right? However, unless teachers are able to accommodate to students, it does not work. And the way that teachers are really able to accommodate to their students is by building relationships. And so let's just take a second here. Feel free to pause the video and think to yourself just a minute or two. How have you recently over or under accommodated? Take a minute, pause the video, write it down. Think about in your most recent interactions with students, how have you over accommodated to them or under accommodated to them based on the two theories we have just discussed. And now we're going to come back from that pause with the 2 or 3 things that you maybe have thought of that could be a little bit that you've over accommodated or under accommodated, could have gone a little bit better, could have maybe, could have been really positive, but maybe wasn't as positive as you thought it might have been. Now we're going to come back and we're going to talk about how we can go better, how we can be better going forward. And so everybody wants to improve. Everybody wants to improve how they're going to be doing in their classroom, what their classroom structure looks like, and everything along those lines. However, we have to really put in that time and effort to make those work. Now, every class and teacher work differently. Every class structure is going to look different. And so some of these suggestions may not work well for your classroom, and that is okay. You do not have to take every single one, but try at least a couple of them and see how they work for your classroom. Some of them may work really well for some students, and some of them may work really well for other students, so please don't discount anything before you give it a try. The first recommendation I have going forward is to really build relationships with your students starting from the beginning of the school year. Don't wait until a student is struggling to get to know them and how they work. Really get to know a student from the beginning of the school year before they can even be struggling to understand how you can support them in times of need when they may be struggling in your classroom. Sometimes a struggle in the classroom is not associated to something that's actually going on inside the classroom, or rather outside factors, and those barriers that we mentioned earlier are coming into play. And so that relationship already being established allows you to lean on it and allow the student to know that you are a safe place, and that you can provide positive feedback and praise for them that maybe is going to be more beneficial for them inside the classroom at that moment, as well as for what's going on outside of the classroom as well. Some ways to build that relationship can be starting off the year with an exercise for your students where you give them a couple of days, not doing it in one classroom, period, maybe giving them a week or giving them a chance to come back to it during a week. And so really allowing them to write what makes a teacher really good for you. What in your mind is the perfect teacher? How does a teacher help you best? How are you best helped? And what is your type of learning style? Asking questions like these really allows students to put the information and how they best learn and how they best function and what they see a positive teacher role model as into your hands. It allows you to understand, okay, I do not run my classroom in this way. However, I understand that this may be helpful for this student, which I may be willing to try it with the student in an interpersonal situation, pulling them aside. If it's maybe also asking your student, how do they prefer to receive feedback and praise? Do they prefer to receive it in person in a conversation? Do they prefer to receive it on a paper with written words? Or do they prefer to receive it in a comment on an assignment and more just so, things here or there that they can work on? Or do they prefer to receive it in front of the class? All of these are different types of receiving styles that students can have and that teachers should be aware of. Just as some students don't like being called on and cannot be called on for other reasons and accommodations, being able to receive praise and feedback can be in those as well. Some students do not want to be called to the center of attention, which is absolutely fine, but teachers should be aware of that so they can make it as positive as possible. Another suggestion that I'm going to make is that being able to build a relationship with your student should be able to be something that is more informal and have the option to be formal as well. So one way that students can build a relationship with you informally is by being able to have some sort of handshake or something that's maybe just singular to you and them. That maybe can be like a secret type of message that you can give them when they're doing something really well. And this doesn't have to be for every single student. It can be individualized as well. Something that really tells them that you care and that you're looking at what they're doing and that they're being positive and you are recognizing that. Another situation that you can try is being able to do conferences with the students. Now, I know this one may take a little bit more of your time and that may be more difficult. However, giving it a try is something that I do recommend. Being able to build that relationship with your students one-on-one and being able to say, I want you to succeed very well and I'm here to help you in whatever way I can is going to be something that's going to be positive for the student. It may change how they're going to look at you. It's also going to be able to establish a positive, memorable message and be able to establish more memorable messages going through the school year. And a memorable message for students and people alike is when they're given a message or they're delivered a type of memory or something along that really sticks with them for a long time. Some memorable messages stick with people from when they receive it through the rest of their life, and some stick with them through the rest of a school year, through the rest of a section of education in different ways. However, it's going to be memorable for them and it's going to have a long-lasting impact that's going to change how they look at teachers, how they look at the classroom, and how they do that as well. My final recommendation is doing regular check-ins with them to make sure that you're one, continuing that relationship and that it's working well. Two, if there's something that needs to be adjusted, how can it be adjusted and when can it be adjusted? And then three, what does that look like for you, being able to understand that the students are being able to provide you feedback, just as teachers receive observations and evaluations, maybe providing evaluations for the students of saying, I think that you're doing this really well, and here are some things that can be worked on. Again, all of these are different ways to provide feedback and provide praise, but it's really making sure that we're focusing on the student as an individual and making sure that we're not letting barriers and biases that teachers have get in the way of providing feedback and praise that is specialized to that student that makes them feel welcomed, seen, and important in your classroom. I hope that these suggestions have been helpful, and I appreciate you taking the time to listen to all of these, and I hope that you go forward and share these messages with other people around you in your schools, and that students are able to have a more positive interactions with all of their teachers, and that teachers are able to build more positive, long-lasting relationships with their students. Thank you.